Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of June 15th, 2023. We will call the meeting to order. And before we begin, we will actually start with the land acknowledgement. So Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawandarack, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Item number 3 on our agenda is to ask if anyone has any disclosures of interest, whether they are pecuniary or non-pecuniary. I see no hands, so that will be a unanimous no. Item number 4 is the approval of our agenda, and the agenda has been circulated to all of us and is online. Do we have any amendments to it, or may we have a mover and seconder for the approval of the agenda? Lay Member Thompson will make that resolution, and Councillor Bradzi will second that. Then before we vote, I will just read it. Resolved that the June 15th, 2023 Finance Committee agenda be approved. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Item number 5 is the receipt of our previous minutes. And I realized it was a very short meeting.
Now you can just move to discussion.
So we're not going to have the approval of it, of the previous minutes?
Those minutes go to council.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we had any amendments that we thought needed to be made to it, though?
Would happen at council.
Okay. So the onus is on councillors if there are any amendments to the finance meetings then. Thank you. Item number 6 is delegations and presentations, of which we have none tonight. Item number 7 are our consent reports, of which we have none tonight. Item number 8 is to deal with Finance Report 23-20, which is a budget amendment to Mountain View Excavating. Does anybody?
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just back to what you had your discussion with the clerk with the minutes. Was I hearing between the two of you that the minutes are approved by council or not the committee? And so it's only approved by the councilors, not the committee members.
Yes, that was the discussion, and I think that was what we have been agonizing over prior to, as we're transitioning into standing committees, is that the timing of most of the committees takes place, and then we bring a verbal report to the next council meeting. And then if the clerk could just jump in here too.
Through the chair, yes. So if the minutes go to the committee, you guys meet once a month. If the minutes go to the committee for approval, then they get ratified at council. Everything gets pushed back. So the business of the committee gets pushed back almost a month. So if this is something that you would like to change, we can definitely bring it back. This is also direction from our acting CAO as well. We've had discussions with the clerk as well. I know I'm the deputy clerk, but we've had discussions, and that seems like that was the consensus. But if you would prefer to have us take that back and see if we can, the main concern was that business of the committee gets pushed. So that's just where we're at.
So if I can, it's just new to me. So I just heard it and kind of heard it informally between the two of you. So I haven't really processed it in my mind. But the main thing that comes to my mind is that the minutes are taken. I'm a committee member. I just want to make sure they're accurately reflected from how I remember, or maybe what I said or what the decision was. So it limits my ability to review those minutes. So I haven't figured out this other matter that you're talking about that may delay it. So I don't have an opinion to make at the moment, Madam Chair. It's just new information to me, but it does limit our ability to correct something that might have been said or something might have decided, and and we sit on the committee. So I'll just leave it like that.
If I may make a suggestion then, because I totally hear you. I'm used to going to meetings and seeing the minutes of the last meeting. Perhaps it could come just as a matter of information to the committee at least, so that if we found something in there that we thought was egregiously wrong, beyond a spelling or grammar error I'm talking about, we could at least bring it to the attention of the clerk and it could be corrected, right? So perhaps just a matter of information going forward, the minutes could come? Yep. Would that help at least? We would almost accomplish what you've suggested.
Yeah, that was fine by me, and I'm looking over to the other lay person, lay member, but, yeah.
Does that make sense to everybody else? Yes? I mean, as counselors, you're going to see those minutes at council. So if you read them and see something that needs to be amended at that point in time, we hope you'll speak up too, right? But if you miss it there, it'll come around again to the finance meeting the next month. And you'll see them for information at least then, right? Okay. Then let's continue on with the financial report 23-20, which is a budget amendment about Mountain View excavating. We have our acting treasurer with us this evening, Angela.
Sorry, we just need a mover and seconder to get the discussion going.
Oh, yes, we do, to get it on the table, yes, thank you. So Councillor Charrois has put up her hand to make that motion, and a seconder, Councillor Baradzi. Now I can officially ask Angela to speak to it.
Thank you. Through you, the Chair. This report is outlining, this report is requesting a budget amendment for a payment for Mountain View excavating. The payment, the work was completed in 2018 to remove a wall at the library and art gallery. However, the invoice was never submitted. Staff have reviewed the accounts and can confirm the amounts have been not paid. Therefore, staff are recommending the amount be funded equally between the Library Facility Reserve and the Parks and Recreation Facility Reserve, as noted in the report.
Are there any questions on it? Councillor Baradzi?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I'm just kind of curious if the works were completed in 2018?
Yes, the quote and the work were completed in 2018.
I'm just kind of curious to the delay, what's taken so long?
So speaking with the vendor or the contractor, the individual that was responsible for processing the invoices was retiring, found the invoice. At the same time, they were transitioning to a new software and the invoice was completely missed in their system. So now that she's retiring, going through her documents, she had found the invoice. Staff have done a thorough review of our accounts and cannot find payment of this invoice.
Councillor Charrois?
Through you, Chair, thank you. So being on the library board as well, this came to the library board and we had a discussion about it, and I can say that the library staff have also looked through it all and we definitely did not pay for it before.
Any other questions or comments? I will say that I was a bit torn when I saw it as well, given how many years had gone by, and I am not a lawyer, but the understanding that I always have is that there is a statute of limitations and so on and so forth, which we are probably past. So I will say that in my mind, the yin and the yang of it was that on the one hand, I thought, well, this was forever ago, right? Why are we paying it? But the yang, I guess the other side of it says to me, you know, who are we as people? We contracted to do the work. They did the work for us. The honorable thing is to pay the bill, right? And I think that outweighs any other legal considerations, is that it's the honorable thing and it is who we want to be, right? Not to impose my opinion on all of you, but then if we could If I could ask someone to move and second resolution, resolve that report, Finance 23-20, budget amendment on Mountain View Excavating dated June 15th, 2023 be received, and that the committee approve the payment to Mountain View Excavating in the amount of $11,174 to be funded from the Library Facilities Reserve, $5,587, and the Parks and Recreation Facilities Reserve at $5,587. Could I have someone move that? Oh, pardon me, thank you, yes. Then we will call for a vote on that. All those in favor? That's carried, thank you. Moving on to item 8.2 on our agenda, Finance Report 23-21, the 2023 tax write-offs. So I'll start by getting a mover and a seconder to put the report on the floor. Could I ask someone to do that? Councillor Vardy will move that, and Councillor Baradzi will second that. Are there any questions about that? Member Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering if the Acting Director of Finance would be able to clarify, does the town insure any outstanding town invoices that may be with any of these properties are paid prior to somebody being eligible for this?
Yes.
Thank you, and through the chair, actually, that's a good question. Staff regularly look at the accounts receivable and water arrears and move those amounts to tax. As we know, tax is the last stop for collecting dollars for the town. So if we do apply, if someone is eligible for one of these credits, that amount is applied to the tax account to clear any amounts owing. If, however, it does result in the account resulting in a credit balance and the resident requests that payment, then we would look to the other areas, the water and the accounts receivable, to ensure there are no other amounts owed to the town before payment would be released.
Any other questions? Councillor Vardy?
Thank you. I just have a question about 3 Burgess. We're refunding an amount of $1,344.83, but would they have not paid more tax than that during that time period? Bill and I both attended that property that evening.
To our treasurer?
Thank you, through the chair. I don't have the specifics of the property, but my understanding was this fire took place in 2022. So it's prorated from the actual date of the fire to the end of the year. If there's additional application to be made for 2023, that would be a separate application, and then that would be adjusted for 2023. So this is just for that period in 2022, and it's the amount that MPAC has assessed. This does not waive all the taxes that are on the property because there is still a land value of that property.
Thank you very much. That explains it, because I thought they would have paid a lot more taxes than that during that time period. So I was wondering why they were only getting a portion of it back. Thank you.
And if I could ask a question which is related to the issue, but not quite. So we're dealing here with collecting taxes and tax write-offs and so on, and making sure that any other outstanding accounts are also added in that can legally be added in. The flip side of it is when we go to write checks to vendors, and if they owe us money, so if we have a receivable from them but we're paying them, how do we handle those situations?
Through you, to you. That is a good question. I think we would need to investigate those as they come up in tax arrears, because we are reviewing those regularly now. Tax arrears are investigated annually and can be put up for tax sale every 2 years. I think they would be flagged through that process. If they're in the arrears, we're sending out notices, and I think we would capture them then, but that is a good question. I'll follow up with the tax department to ensure we have that process in place.
And I will, I'll continue on with Councillor Vardy, but just to continue that thought. So if, to use an example, a vendor sends us an invoice for us to pay them, but if it turns out they also owe us money, I'll make up an example for an arena rental or something like that. Do we offset them, or how do we do that internally?
Through you, there is no current process of looking at the payables and comparing them to the tax, tax
any
or water
receivable?
system. No. The only ones that we actually apply are the AR and the water that go onto the tax roll.
Thank you. Councillor Vardy?
Thanks. Going back to 3 Burgess, I know the property wasn't occupied until sort of March, April, I think. So do they have to apply again for 2023? Do they have to make another application or just advise you of the date of occupancy?
They would, through you, they would need to make another application to be submitted to MPAC as well, because we would need to prorate those dates, so we would need to be aware of those dates.
So if they contact you?
There is a tax department, thank you, available on the website, and the 357 form, which they have completed before, is available on the town website as well. So they are responsible for completing the form and signing the form and providing the information, which we will then ensure that it's complete and accurate and submit to municipal MPAC.
Any other questions before we call for the vote? Then, all those in favor of approving the tax write-off report? Thank you. That is, pardon me, she reminded me I have not read the exact words. So that was resolved that report, Finance 23-21, the 2023 tax write-offs dated June 15th, 2023 be received, and that the total tax write-offs of $7,975.40 as outlined in Appendix A to the resolution be approved. I'll ask you to put your hands up again. Thank you. That is approved. Moving on to item number 9 on our agenda, which deals with correspondence, really a memo from our treasurer on the 2022 year-end surplus and legal fees. So before we begin discussion, could I have a mover and seconder to receive the memo? Councillor Baradzi, Member Thompson, thank you. Angela, I will give it to you again.
Thank you, and through the chair, this memo is just to advise the committee that there was a change in the year-end amount that was presented back to council. So during the audit review, we had discovered an invoice for legal fees that was not paid that actually applied to 2022, and the amount was roughly $103,000, a significant amount that was worthwhile to accrue back to 2022, and which resulted in a year-end adjustment to our surplus. So the surplus was originally transferred to the council strategic priorities reserve. So that reserve originally allocation was $216,000, but has now been adjusted to $113,130 to fund this overage, and that year-end balance in that reserve now is $157,000 and can be seen on Appendix B. Any questions?
Any questions on that? Member Hutchings?
I have a couple of questions. One will be to you, Angela, through you, Madam Chair, and one will be to the clerk. I'm just a little confused. I don't know which one to start with. Let me start with the clerk first. Let me start with the question. I'm just confused in the fact that we just approved a report for an accrual for $11,000 where we made official motion, and then we have now one for $103,000 where it's a memo. And you have a finance, which I didn't reference, the finance 2315-2022 year-end transfers. Was there official motion on that to approve this report? I mean, I'm just wondering about the process here. Should there not be, if there was a motion to approve the original surplus and now we're changing it by memo, should we not even be reconsidering or making a motion on this? Why is it just a memo?
I will ask the deputy clerk here to jump in.
Through you, Chair, did this report, that it was originally gone to council? Okay, yes, it did. So yeah, that's just, and the reason why it's in a memo form as any changes typically in the past, we bring memos forward under correspondence for those sorts of things.
So the council would have to reconsider this? this as a motion, so why wouldn't, I just confused, I'll get it eventually, why this, about the committee, and why wouldn't the committee be recommending this to council, to look at? Anyway, you guys, you can work that out with the clerk, I'm sure. I'm not gonna take my time on that. And the bigger issue, and maybe it's our first meeting, Angela, I'm sorry, but there's two reports here that both have was not accrued. So as an accountant, you know, and you're an accountant as well, so my ears go up, and are we not, are there, how many other things are we not accruing? Is there, do we not have proper controls in place? And I'm sorry, 2 of the 3 reports right now have said they're not accrued. So do we have the proper process in place to make sure we're capturing our accruals correctly?
Thank you, and through you. Good question. I would say we do have proper controls in place. I can't really speak to 2018. I wasn't here at the time, so I'm not sure what those controls look like. I would say for 2022, there were significant invoices already, and the way, I think we have significant controls in place, but can there always be improvements? This is one where we have identified and we've put procedures in place already for next year to ensure that we capture that going forward. I think this was the only one that was identified, so overall, I think we do a good job, but obviously this did highlight something, then we've captured that and made a process change for next year.
Any other questions from any of the members? I will say that when I was looking at it, I had the same questions that Member Hutchings did about process. And I will say that we're learning and we're working through a transition as we go from being a committee of the whole governance structure to a standing committee structure, and that may be part of how we get past this. And once we're fully past that, when more months going forward, it may be much more straightforward that things are coming to the standing committee. The second thing I just wanted to add on some of these is that that amount from 2018 would be considered immaterial. So certainly it did pop up, and it's unfortunate, but even if it had popped up late, probably would not have been taken care of in 2018 and might have been in 2019, just because it's an immaterial amount to the overall operations of the town. And I'll leave it at that. Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. So through you, Madam Chair, I'm not an accountant, so I'm not going to get technical on this, but however, I did manage lots of money in the federal government. And when you had a project, you had milestones, and I would know if I got a deliverable that I hadn't paid for because I'm going month to month as an executive in the government, looking at the status of everything that I have ongoing. So my concern is, and I would certainly hold all my directors to this, to make sure that they were reviewing their projects so there wouldn't be some kind of surprise surplus or deficit at the end of the year. And when you monitor things month by month, you find these things. So our staff, you know, the department heads, paying close enough attention to their budgets and what's coming through, what they're paying for, or are they just signing things off and not really looking at the status of the projects and where they are? I'll just tell you, the reason I actually ran in 2018 was because I came to a meeting and it was a finance committee, and someone said, well, we're going to surplus $2 million, you know, and the finance person, chair of the committee, just said, oh, isn't that wonderful? You know, like, oh, we got all this money. And I'm sitting there going, you're surplusing $2 million? Is that because a project is delayed? Is that money going to have to be spent in the next fiscal year? Like, you know, it shouldn't be good news, right? And you should know about it, not at year end. So That's just always been a general concern for me, and that's why I ran, because I was worried that nobody was paying close enough attention to finance. So are they? So are they?
Would you like to comment? Sure.
Yes, please, through the chair. All valid points. I think what I could say in response to that, again, we have put some procedures in place, not only for this, but also for projects, so we can monitor how spend is going on projects and flag things early enough. And also that would help capture if something was missed, if we skipped something. So we're looking to that as well, not just in one area, but across the organization. As for surplus, absolutely, we don't want to have we want to ensure reporting is complete and accurate. So if there is a surplus and that's complete and accurate, then that's what it is. But seeing that this was $103,000, we felt it was significant enough and warranted you, council, and this committee to see the change and be aware of that instead of just brushing it off. So wanted to just bring that forward to you.
One of the things I would just like to add, and I wish my memory were better than it is right at this moment, because Angela and I talked about this the other day, about materiality. And when the audit is being done, of course, the materiality limit is set by the auditors, which means, you know, if there are things that come up in the course of the audit that are less than that, they may not actually be adjusted for in the year that we would expect them to be. This, I know, would be well within those immaterial amounts, even though we would like to capture them. For sure, as soon as you get into something over $100,000, we do want to capture those for sure. But yes, so failing that, I will ask.
One more question.
One more
if I can.
question, for sure.
Sorry, maybe two, actually. Just not on a separate issue. One small question, Angela. Next time when you produce the statement of operations, on the final, on the surplus, can we get a budget, actual, you do have an actual here, and then overall? It's hard. I started adding, getting my calculator out, and on that last column, here on the statement of operations, it's the same report, it's part of that report, right? So the other thing was, to Councillor Vardy's point, is when you put it, we put in the reserve and the reserve fund balances. Have we done a reserve fund balance study to see if we have enough? Like, I mean, there's a lot of money here, there's $64 million on one page, and then, I mean, on both pages or something combined. But have we done a reserve fund study to understand that we have enough in reserves or not enough in reserves, and as part of our asset management study?
Angela?
Thank you, and through the chair, we did a reserve rationalization study in 2021. It was done in-house, and it was done with staff based on the information we had on assets at that time, and looked at what we had and how we wanted to fund that over the 10, 20, or 30 years. So there was discussion at that point. And then what we're doing now is working on the asset management plan, and that will be a phase 2 of that reserve study. And then staff will look again at the funding of that and what the funding requirements will be going forward.
I think I could add to that when we were looking at the budget, there were quite a few pages attached to a schedule on the reserves and the reserve funds. And our treasurer at the time had notations in other columns saying, you know, our goal is this should be 10% of, let's say, water billings, or this should be a percentage of something else. And then had notations there as to whether we were meeting those internal guidelines. But there were some that were still had no guidelines beside them that definitely need to be looked at. And I'm sure most of you noticed and we will come to it in the terms of reference, certainly the adequacies of the reserve is a key function of this committee. So thank you. We do want to circle around to that in the next number of months for sure. Angela, did you want to add to that?
Thank you for mentioning that. And I just wanted to mention that attached to the budget, I think it's almost one of the very last pages, those reserve rationalizations and what the threshold should be, what we're trying to maintain is at one of the very last or a couple of last pages of the budget document.
And then I have one last question, if doesn't have to be the last for all the rest of you, but when you did the recalculations of the reserves, and you have the adjustment column, the second to last column there, but I don't see anything on the library adjustment that we just talked about, the $11,000. Would it not get incorporated into this? Because the idea was to take it out of two separate reserves for this.
Through you, and just to make sure I'm understanding your question, this summary here is for the year end 2022. The adjustment now will be a go forward as 2023, and it will be a budget amendment in the forecast for 2023 reserve amounts.
Oh, thank you for clarifying that. Yes, so it's going to come out of the 2023. Thank you. Then, if there are no other questions, we will ask you to vote, and I will read the resolution first. Resolved that the 2022 year-end surplus and legal fees memo be received. All those in favor? That is passed. Item number 10 on our agenda is a discussion on the terms of reference, and I will just speak to that shortly as I clear some of these things up. At our last meeting, I thought it was really important to circulate to all of you the terms of reference that had been passed by council. I feel that when we ask you to join us in this journey, that it would only be fair to share with you what the expectations are for what we're going to be doing, right? And so that was why we circulated the terms of reference. I will say that I find there's still a little bit of confusion on my part, I guess, and I will be asking the clerk's department and so on to again clarify it. We had a report that came out, and I will just refer to that, in April, which was actually passed at the Committee of the Whole, that had certain terms of reference, and then later we received an email in May, and the terms of reference for the Finance Standing Committee had changed slightly. The one that I actually did circulate to all of us, I believe was the one prior to that. So the one that was actually attached to the report that was approved by the Committee of the Whole and then by Council. One of the key changes, though, that I always worried about has to do with the external audit function. And I know some of you have looked at it, at our terms of reference, and even have further suggestions. And so really, I would just like to open this up at this time to talk about some of those things. We have called the terms of reference of our standing committees, you know, a living document that we will continue to fine tune. But some of the functions that we're talking about that were on there and now have kind of fallen off, or I'm not sure where we stand with that, and I'll just use the external audit as that example, sort of have fallen off of that. And I think it's something that, we'd really like to hear from each of you as the finance members as to, where you see that function taking place. I will say that I think the committee that we have here and the lay members that we have added into all of this come with a truly unique set of skills that we've never had the advantage of having before. So yes, we have more professional accountants on the board than ever, some with extensive public accounting experience, some with extensive management experience working in municipalities and hospitals and so on. And likewise, we have counselors who bring, a lot of common sense and their own backgrounds to the table as well. And we have a lay member who has a lot of municipal experience at a senior level as well. And so I'd really like to hear your comments as to, whether you think there was anything really important that we should be adding in and asking council to consider amending the terms of reference. And I said one of the unique things about finance and the terms of reference is that there was a really, really intense and good job done on the terms of reference. And I will say some of the other standing committees' descriptions on their terms of reference are much briefer, much less to them than ours. So it almost puts us at a disadvantage because it's quite a comprehensive list, right? But anyway, I'd like to open it up to the floor and people's comments, if I could. Member Hutchings.
Just a point of order as to what on document control, what terms of reference are we looking at? There's been two sent to me. One was distributed in hard copy last meeting, as you're suggesting, and one was sent electronically, and the two aren't the same.
Yes, that's been my confusion all along as well. The one that was that came to council at the April 17th Committee of the Whole, I believe is the one that I shared with you, and that was ultimately passed by council. The one that came on May 15th came in an email.
Yeah.
And so, to that extent, doesn't hold the same legality, right?
So we're working from the one you distributed then? That's
Yes,
okay.
yeah, I would say, and I'll ask the deputy clerk to clarify that.
Yes, so the one that was approved by Committee of the Whole and then Council, that is the one that we will be working with. I think the confusion comes from, there's been a lot of hands on the document, and something might have been saved by accident and then circulated. But to completely clarify it, the one that was approved by Council is the one that we will be working with.
So if I still have the floor. So I have a lot of things. I mean, I've provided some edits on it. But my question really is, again, a lot of it's just figuring things out, systems out here, is you have the Finance Standing Committee, and then we have the Budget Committee of the Whole. So I just, where I'm struggling with is that demarcation between the two. I understand the Budget, Committee of the Whole, all council will see it and have that debate, and that's, where it maybe possibly should be. But where I'm struggling with a little bit is the Budget Committee Hall is pretty thin. You kind of get the budget and wastewater rates and fees and charges, and really that's it. During my interview process, one of the things we talked about was a budget strategy, a multi-year budgeting. Is that expected at the Budget Committee, or is that at the Finance Committee? Because when I see you have a Budget Committee, are you talking budget strategy there? Or are you just talking in multi-year budgeting there, or is this for the Finance Committee? Can I ask that question first?
I'm not sure which of us wants to jump in and try. I will say that I asked that question when this was being set up as well, thinking that the budget almost made more sense to be through the Finance Committee, right? In the end, that wasn't council's wish, and it ended up being dealt with at the Committee of the Whole, so all council members would be there. So you're right. I still find us to be in transition on some of these issues, and we're struggling with, what the answer is and what makes more sense. Councillor Vardy, do you have anything to add to that?
So through you, in my naive opinion, I would think the Finance Committee would be looking at budgeting from a more structural standpoint as opposed to a content standpoint, which is why all of council wants to be able to see what is it that we're going to do the next year. But I would see the Finance Committee looking at how do we structure our budgets? Do we have enough in reserves? How do we move to multi-year budgeting? Those kinds of things. So if that's a demarcation that is understandable to accountants, that's kind of how I see it.
And Member Hutchings, I know in your suggestions that you were kind enough to share with me, one of the things you added in there was budget strategy. So do you think that's...
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. I think
what you're getting at?
To Councillor Vardy's explanation, that's kind of where I'm going, I put in things like budget strategy, multi-year budgeting strategy, things like you just mentioned, Chair, is appointment of auditors, and to Councillor Vardy's earlier comments and earlier reports, looking at projections, review budget versus projections, throughout the year, so it's not a surprise at year end, and we know what those sorts of, so I have a number of suggestions here, but the first thing's on the budget, and maybe that's what we're doing. We're working on strategy, and then council will recommend that strategy to council, and then they can apply that to the budget, and when they deal with the budget, maybe that's how we deal with it.
Councillor Vardy?
Through you, if I could ask Member Hutchins, just to explain a little bit for me to better understand what you mean by budget strategy. Is it the technical aspects that I kind of referred to, or is it something else?
So you may want to look at a budget that's, looks at it back to your earlier question about asset management reserves. You may want to be looking at a strategy that's going to provide, your budgets, but also you're going to apply a capital levy on top of that too. I mean, how do we get there? What's the strategy we'd add 0.75 or 1.5 on, just our capital levy, those sorts of things, make sure our reserves are up to speed. So what kind of strategies do we have are we going to add money on top for our reserves? Are we going to, are we to have too much reserves? Will they take them off? So what is that strategy, what it looks like in the future? So, yeah.
You had another question, though, at the beginning. Would you like to continue?
Other members had their hand up, so I'll say.
Member Thompson, did you have your hand up first? Oh, Councillor Charwa.
Through you, Chair, thank you. So mine's just a comment. I'm not sure of the process, but like when we have these discussions, I feel most comfortable as a councillor having the feedback from everybody on this council, on this committee, and almost like a back and forth, because yes, council has our strategic priorities that, the finance committee doesn't quite have that information, and they would be maybe our second set of eyes or whatever on that to make sure that we're part of that. But at the same point, I would also like them to be able to see what we're kind of looking at doing, and then having that extra, expertise as far as, well, we do it a little differently in this municipality and maybe we save money here, right? So I don't know how we do that, but it would be nice if we could use that extra, that extra professional opinion that we have here, right? So it's just my suggestion. I don't know how we do it, but that would be welcome for sure.
Member Hutchins, do you have any other comments?
Did Member Thompson have his hand up before me? And then I'll
pardon me.
speak.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Everything I'm hearing here is excellent, of course, with Member Hutchins' experience in regional municipal to his professional accreditation too is yours. But the one thing I just wanted to ask about is on everybody's terms of reference, I never did see anybody talk about asset management and reviewing it. So that's the one I was hoping, if we're going to go somewhere with a strategy, where's asset management in this?
Yes, and I can say in the draft that Brian shared, he had asset management added in, so thank you. I'll take that as an endorsement that that's a really important item that needs to be on our schedule as well. Do you have other points?
I don't know how you want to handle this. I can go through the documents, but I don't monopolize the microphone, but it's my edits, so everybody, I handed these, as you know, I've been having problems with my email system with the town of Grimsby, and so I've been doing things I just figured we just got it worked out over the last 48 hours. So I handed this in hard copy to yourself and the clerk. So for the members, if you'd like me to go through my suggestions, Member Thompson's shaking his head. Anyway, no.
I will say there aren't that many.
There aren't that many, but
and perhaps we could
look for your advice, Madam Chair, how we manage this.
And I would like to see this move forward with a recommendation to council with any changes that we're thinking of. So welcome comments. Councillor Sharp.
I would like to hear those comments, and I'm sure our council members, or committee members, would like to hear it as well. Right? Yes.
So I would say then, Member Hutchins, why don't you go through yours one by one and share them?
Try not to look at Member Thompson. I'm really happy you didn't sit beside me this time too. And whoever's chair this is, it keeps creeping down as the meeting goes. I got the bad chair. I got it's just slowly sliding on. Eventually I'm going to be under the table. So just to start, the finance, I would say that you should, if you look at this, the Finance Standing Committee will be receiving and approving reports. It just doesn't mention anywhere, the town of Grimsby's financial department. Those are small things. The town clerk shall direct the following, I don't know why general's in there, I think it's redundant word. So the suggestions I made was a budget, you know, A and B are fine. B, I put in one here, budget strategy. We should include in addition to what we already have here. I also think we should have a treasurer's investment report, I think which is required on the Municipal Act to come forth under section, I think it's 345, Municipal Act. It has to come forth every year to the council. Risk management is great. The other thing I added was multi-year budget strategy. This is in addition to everything what's here. I mean, it's sound. It's good. It's a good document. And item L, it says to develop and implement corporate key performance indicators. I'm not sitting in a committee to do that. I'm sitting on a committee to see them. So I just put key performance indicators. It starts off by report to council on all these things. We don't report to council to develop and implement corporate key, we're here to do key performance indicators. Item N, and we can share this, is procurement policies and procedures. And again, I not just looked at my cities, I've looked across, I looked at about 5 or 6 other terms of reference. It's very common, very, very common, that council gets the reports on contracts, especially sole sourcing. Most councils, that's a real issue. You want to see if staff are sole sourcing or not. Okay?
Federal government,
Yeah.
big deal.
Okay. So that's another thing that should be on here. To Madam Chair, yours, I've added appointment of auditors, question mark. I'm not sure if this committee does that, but I think it's not mentioned in here. Review budget versus actual projections. I think that should be done a couple times a year before year end. And then to Member Thompson's point, I put asset management strategy, which I stole from him. I saw his email. And then I just thought, and knowing the history of this council, when it says advisory committees reporting to finance committee, it talks about GDAC, Niagara Power Inc., and Grimsby Power Inc. And knowing the history about this, you know, some 2 terms of council before, it just says they reports. We really maybe should define what we're asking them for. And I just wrote a question: what do we want reports from these people to be? Because I know 2 councils ago there was a big issue about what MPI and GPI were reporting to the council. So I just don't think we should get reports, and I think we should ask them what the reports are. Do we want an income statement, financial statement, projections, dividend statement? What do we want? So those are my comments. There's a lot there, sorry, but so there's just what I put down.
Does anybody want to add to that or comment on it? I'm hearing general comments that other members are happy with that. Perhaps what we could do is have that typed up and incorporated into the latest document on our town server to make it that. And I don't want to drag this on very long. So in some ways, I would like us to, put a motion forward to amend our terms of reference and to incorporate these things in here, and I will read them again if you need it, and then make a recommendation on to council to approve the change of the terms of reference. Or the second option, I guess, could be to have it typed up into a new document, bring it back to the next finance committee, and then you'll be looking at a clean copy with these things in there. Or I'm open to a third suggestion. Councillor Vardy.
It's just a question, and it's a little bit, but when Mr. Hutchins mentions MPI, GPI, Grimsby Hydro, and I know that we've got an AGM coming up for one of them, and it'll be a special council meeting because most of us will be in attendance. Structurally, how does that work in terms of them as legal entities? I mean, we are major shareholder, but does that mean they report through finance, or do they report to the town through another mechanism? I'm just a little bit confused because they are very different legal entities than our departments, yeah.
I think that's something that we've really struggled with since these entities were created. And I always go back in my mind to some examples with public companies. And so, I'll use BCE or somebody like that as an example. So, Bell Canada has many, many, many companies, right? There's the holding company and many, many operating companies underneath that. And I always say that for those entities that are significant in that group of companies, I am sure the board of directors is always paying attention to what's going on with the subsidiary companies. That they don't sit there saying, oh, we don't need to hear from you till, you come with your final financial statements at the end of the year. That senior management is always looking at all the operating companies in the group. And the board of directors is occasionally getting reports from them as to what is going on and how they're doing, right? And to me, that is, a comparable example that we need to pay attention to it a little bit more. And those operating companies at BCE or wherever the example is, they all legally have to have their own board of directors too, right? So I struggle with that as a comparable example, but I put it on the table.
So do I, because they're not subsidiary companies. We are shareholders.
No, that's what it is.
So it's considered a subsidiary company of the town?
Yes.
Okay, so is it similar, help me through this too, like we make investments with our reserves, right? They're not just sitting there, they must be invested in something that's going to be returning us some kind of interest and payable, one would hope, right? So is it the same kind of thing that we're reviewing our investments? Is that?
I would say yes, and in fact, one of the items on our terms of reference said investments, and of course, Member Hutchings said, a treasurer investment report, and I know that our finance department has done that in the past and will continue to bring forward, a report on our investments and the rate of return on them and so on and so forth. And so I see a very comparable example there, where we'll also need to extend that to the investment in the subsidiary companies, that we shouldn't just be waiting to find out at the, 6 months after the year end how our subsidiary companies are doing. We need to monitor those investments just like we do an investment in some long-term bond we might own or whatever that we have the rest of our investments in, right?
If I may, what's the purpose of the AGM? Is that not the time that we do it, or?
That is a legal step required under the Ontario Business Corporations Act, but, and that's where the financial statements are presented and certain resolutions must be passed and so on. But at that meeting is not where the evaluation of the investment takes place. The evaluation of how these entities are doing and is going to become a responsibility and is a responsibility of finance. And it's something that really has not been done in the past. Any comments from anyone? Member Townsend.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. Just to get back to the terms of reference, and my suggestion, as much as I hate supporting, no. Actually, Member Hutchings, I respect everything he had said, and I value it very much. I would think that we ask the clerk to get the Word document going, we're tracking on it, revision numbers, so we always know what we're working on. And then it comes back to us back and forth through emails. That way we take a clean document after staff have reviewed it, we've reviewed it, and then it can go to council with a clean document. That's just my recommendation.
Yes?
I wholeheartedly agree. I feel like we have been working with too many documents, trying to get everything established. So I think that's a great idea, having the track changes. Just so we're all aware, I believe it is the appendix to report TC-23-08 that went to Committee of the Whole in April. the appendix to that one, that is the one that we will be working off of. We'll be tracking all of the changes. We've received Member Hutchings' information. I can refer back to the live stream as well to take down everybody's verbal sort of requests that I may have missed. But I do, yeah, I agree that that would be a great idea.
I will give Councillor Charwa an opportunity.
Through you, Chair, thank you. Just clarification, through you, Katie. So will we actually see, will it be like bolded as far as what the revision is? Because I'd like to know what the change
We
is.
can track changes through Microsoft Word, so you see the actual changes.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
it's all
Thank you.
It's visually. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you have anything to add to it?
Not to add to that conversation, I agree with the members suggesting, you know, about tracking it. That's exactly, though, to Councillor Vardy's point, though, is it's on here, if I'm going to be on a finance committee, and it's on here that we get reporting, advisory committees reporting to finance standing committee is GDAC, Niagara Power Inc., and Grimsby Power Inc. If it's going to be on here, I want to know what I'm doing with it and what they're reporting on, to your point. So it's a nice, big, bold statement, but I know I've watched your councils, I've lived here my whole life. I've watched the interaction on the NPI and GPI and all that sort of stuff, and I just want to make sure what we're responsible for, what reports are we getting. And I'm not a lawyer. I can't give you advice like your lawyer can, and as well as some of your auditors, but I know, you know, as you mentioned, Chair, is that under the Business Corporations Act, and I don't remember, it's 90-10 or it's 100%. I think we own 100% of NPI and 90% of GPI, I think, if that's just my memory. Opposite? Okay, thank you. Close. Anyways, but I know other municipalities meet separately as the shareholder. It's weird, you're council, but you're also as the shareholder with their company. And they ask, it's not just an AGM, but when they meet separately as the shareholder, like any other shareholder would, they do ask questions they get. But I just want to know, can we have them report through this? And if we do, what are we asking them for? That's my main thing. And I don't know if we can answer that by email. I think you're going to have to get some advice on that.
I think if I can go back in time, prior, quite a few years prior, but even, I'm going to say in the last term of council, on occasion, the chair and CEO of Grimsby Power did come before council and provide updates on occasion as to what was happening with the entity. So to use that as an example, I think I was thinking that they would now be coming to finance, that's what that meant as well, when it was on our terms of reference, that they'd be coming to finance to update us. And then we would, you know, be sharing that information with council or something to that effect. But I hear what you mean. It's just three names here, and we need to know what we're actually doing with them, right? I don't know where the answer is going to lead, other than could we leave it with staff to give some thought to all of this as well?
That was what I was going to say, actually.
Anything else you'd like to add yet before we finish?
I have one last thing, if I can. It is the terms of reference, but not, it's to an early decision about the memo that came forth to us. I was told that the council will make a decision. If you look at the terms of reference, right up front, the second sentence says, the town clerk shall direct the following matters to the Finance Standing Committee, which we are, for consideration and report to council. So I just feel that report we did regarding the legal fees, we were told that we're not to make decision, it's just a memo, and it's council make the decision. If you read the terms of reference, that's not what that says. Okay? So I just want to make that point clear. It's not, I thought we're a committee that makes recommendations to council. That's what this says. That memo doesn't allow us to do that.
Councillor Charwa.
Through you, Chair, thank you. I just want to agree that everything, I would prefer as a council member that we fully maximize this committee, and we get all of that information and the recommendations before we go to council. Because even with our last council meeting, when we dealt with the Peach King Arena, that's something that I would have liked to have seen go through community services. And, sorry, pardon? Yeah, and I feel like we dropped the ball on that one. So I would prefer if everything went here before it went to council, if that's possible.
If it has a financial.
If it has a financial
Correct.
impact,
Yes,
yes.
thank you.
Yes, we didn't mean everything.
Correct.
Any other comments? from
One
the
last
members?
comment. Can somebody find in the budget $100 to fix this chair?
Well, the good news is, we're looking for new chairs.
Okay.
So feel free to switch with the chair beside you. I will just add one more change to our terms of reference, and that's item P. It says matters of legislated changes, including all relevant changes to the Canadian Public Accounting Act practices. I just want to clarify that there is no such act. We are bound under the Municipal Act, and the Municipal Act actually uses the correct terminology, but I'll share it with you. The wording should be the Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards. But,
I've got this here if you'd like.
thank you.
Resolve this.
Thank you. So I will read the resolution and then ask for a mover and a seconder.
Move the second first.
Thank you. So if I could ask someone to move and second, and the resolution will deal with the amendments to the terms of reference. Councillor Bradzy's moved, Member Hutchings has seconded. And so the resolution says, resolved that the Finance Committee refer their amendments to the terms of, refer their amendments to the terms of reference to council for approval.
Is that what you were?
But do we want, I think we want it to come back to us first.
Okay, sorry.
So we're just going to, I will say, resolve that the Finance Committee refer their amendments to staff to incorporate into the terms of reference and bring back to the next finance meeting.
And circulate, like prior to circulate the.
Chair?
I'll let you just reword that while we pause for a moment. Yes, Councillor.
No, member. Through you, Chair, just to make sure that it's, members do not report to staff. We report through the chair or vice chair. So I just want to make sure. Okay.
Yes, and so while we're just pausing for a moment to reword that, I know the memo went out, and so just a reminder to everyone, to if you have any questions, we're asking the lay members especially to direct their questions through the chair so that we can share that with staff to get answers. I'm just looking to see if I have anything else. Some of our lay members had asked for some background documents, which I know our finance director has now shared. Is there anything else that our lay members would like us to give to them as background training or anything like that? And I'll tell you what comes to mind is that Beth Brenz had put on a training workshop for us in finances. And so we actually do have like a PowerPoint presentation. Would that be useful to share with our lay members? I'm thinking that would be a really easy document to scroll through and to read, just to refresh and to help our lay members with that. I see some nodding. Perhaps we could ask Angela to circulate that to our lay members. Anthony, who has joined us as well, welcome. Do you have any questions, Anthony, or any comments to add to all of this?
No, nothing thus far, thanks.
And be brought back to, yeah. Yeah. I will read the resolution then. So it says, resolved that the Finance Committee refer, I did get him first. Thank you. That is a common mistake of mine, but we actually covered it off. So resolved that the Finance Committee refer their amendments to staff for review and to be brought back to the July 13th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting. All those in favor then? Thank you. Anthony? Thank you. That is unanimously approved then. Thank you. I think that actually brings us almost to the end of our meeting this evening. The next meeting will be on July 13th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Does anybody have any other business? I realize we asked for that at the beginning and that would have been put into the agenda, but just in case anybody has any last comments? No? Then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Anthony.